What is up, folks? This is your boy Dino, aka your Solid Five. Welcome to Cali DTO. Um, I have a guest today. Um, you will know her as an author. She had recently come out with a book called The Significance of Curly Hair. Um, and this is Kara Zajac. Welcome.
Hello.
How are you today?
I am doing great. How are you doing, Dino?
Tired, but I'm just, you know, busy, busy, busy.
Yeah, it's early over there, isn't it?
This is too early. It's 10 o'clock.
Yeah. I'm on East Coast, so different time zone.
Yeah, yeah. It feels early, but that's only because I worked late. So,
Mm,
and then I'm just kind of like, it's just another day. Uh,
cool.
so your book, it's obviously about the relationship between your grandmother and the family, and the things you kind of find out about your grandmother and so on. So how did this come about?
Well, I appreciate you asking me that, especially around the holidays when we're thinking more about family, we're thinking more about loved ones. My grandmother was my best friend growing up. We slept in the same bed until I was 9, and she was my confidant. She was my buddy. She was the person that held me up when I was falling down. And one time when I was about 13, she knew I was a writer before I knew, and she asked me if I would ever write a story about her because she saw in the newspaper a young boy had written about his grandfather, and she was all excited. And at 13, I was like other 13-year-olds, and I felt like I knew it all. And I looked at Graham, and in my eyes at that time, I thought she had just had babies and gotten married, and I felt like she didn't get to achieve her dreams. So I said to her, "But you've never done anything." And of all the worst things you can say to someone you love or anybody, just you've never done anything. I wish I could take that back now. And as she was on her deathbed, she was in a coma, and I was flying home to Boston to reach her. I got her on the phone, and they said she could hear me. And I said, Grandma, I'm writing that book that you wanted, even though it was 30 years late. So
Yeah.
that's why this was a deathbed promise I made to my grandmother that her story mattered and her life mattered. And now the world gets to share her story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I read that part of the book where you were flying back home, or to wherever you know it happened,
Yeah.
and I remember like that happening to not, I mean, obviously not the same way, but I was only like, I don't know, 20, 25 miles away from you know where my grandma was, and
Yeah.
so not very far, but I remember getting that call, and like, and where I was at, you have to like drive over this mountain to
Hmm.
get to the big city. And
Hmm.
so I remember getting the call, getting, just like literally get in my car and just speed off. And then I remember like a tunnel vision kind of like moment where like I am going down the hill and I'm just like weaving in and out of traffic, like just as fast as I could because I only had minutes. Um,
Yeah.
and I probably should have, anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes of like just because I'm like speeding down and I don't give like I don't care about like everybody in my way. I'm just like get out, whatever. And
That's the worst
I
call.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was devastated, and I didn't make it. So we all gave our respects and everything. And they let us, you know, they they uh, they allowed us to like keep her there, for X amount of time before they picked up the body and then they took her out. But that was one of the worst days of my life for sure.
I'm sorry you didn't make it. That's oh,
Yeah,
it's a tough one. You know, you're almost
yeah,
there, you're almost, and you just can't get there fast enough.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then, but I mean, at least I still got to see her,
Yeah.
like, in a way, and
Yeah.
actually in a weird way, it brought us all back together for one more last time,
Well,
because
and yeah, because I think, when the matriarch passes or someone who has a significant role in the family, I think that does bring people together. It does remind us that, hey, on some level, we are this loving unit, and even though we may live different places and live different lives, we're still together. We're still part of
mhm,
each other. I think that's kind of what some of that grandmotherly bond is.
yeah. Was
And
your grandma like the sort of the glue of the family too?
she was the glue of the family. She raised four daughters after my grandfather died,
Mm,
and she just had this uncanny way of looking at life from a rose colored lens. Like there was always a positive spin, even though they were poor, they had no money, they didn't have a car. Like some people would have really looked at all the negative of that, and she always looked at the positive and said, you can do anything as long as you have love, if you have support, if you have the right mindset. And it was such a great thing to pass on to her, her kids and then her grandchildren. So
yeah.
I feel like that has really allowed me in my life to thrive, you know no matter what happened, because as long as you want it and you have love and you have that faith, you can have it. Yeah.
And yeah, it was weird. Like after that day, like everybody just like, the great divide happened where we
Mm,
all just like went different ways, and I'm like, whoa, like I haven't seen my cousins in years. Now that I think about it,
yeah.
it's a weird, act post, post effect
Yeah.
about
And it's kind of, you know, it's kind of sad when that happens. Like my whole book really takes place the week of my grandmother's death. So it's basically the same as what you're talking about. My cousins were there and we all got together, and we rekindled that family bond. But then, sometimes, a few live on the West Coast, some live on the East Coast, and it is hard to keep in touch. And at that time you wish, hey, we should do better. And every time I talk about it, like especially with you right now, I'm like, I could do better. I'm gonna call more. I'm gonna fly out there, maybe do a book signing and meet with the cousins, because it matters. It's a different bond than you have. You know.
yeah. I've tried. There's only so much you can do. If they're not willing to
Oh,
give you the effort, I mean, it's life, family.
oh. See, I can say I try, but I could always try a little harder. Yeah, I could try a little harder.
I
I
mean, we
haven't
all
tried the
could.
best I can.
We
Yeah,
all could.
yeah, yeah. Isn't it funny though how like um we all kind of, when you get these family things together, we're not all that different, like your story and my story sounds very similar. I got the call about Gran, you got the call. I
Yeah,
didn't make it in time to see her, and you didn't and it's like, in this world that's so divided, especially with politics and racial stuff and gay straight stuff, on some core level, well, we're all kind of connected. Our stories aren't that different.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's I know. I was just thinking about that. Especially reading the start of the book. I was like, oh, that's so like, kind of what I had to do, or what I went through, at least within that day. Um,
Yeah.
and then so when you started writing the book, um, you must have had to like, talk to a lot of the family and like research a lot of stuff about
Mm.
the history, right? So like, how was that process like? Because that seems like so much, like obviously it's a lot of work, but it's obviously like sort of rewarding at a time, because then you actually do become even more closer after that
Yes.
point.
uh yeah. So up until that point, my grandmother died in 2008. I was a terrible writer. And on the plane, as she had just died, and I'm on the plane back to Boston to get to her, it was almost like this dam unblocked in me, and words just started flowing out. And suddenly
Hmm.
I was a great writer. So it took that enormous amount of grief to unblock my writing potential. Um, so after that, my mom has three sisters, and then I have about five cousins. And I interviewed my mom and I interviewed my aunts, and I did get very close with them. But what was funny that they were all raised in the 50s, and there would be like specific events like when they went to Revere Beach. Um, my mother is the youngest of the four girls. She's like, oh, we went every day. And then I
Mm.
talked to my Aunt Janet, who was the oldest, and she's like, oh, no, we only went once a summer. And then my Aunt Betty was like, oh, we went about twice a week. And then my Aunt Nancy was like, no, no, we never went. All the same event, but they all had different memories of it. And it was
Yeah.
just really hilarious trying to put all these things into a book format and keep with, your storyline and your character arc. And, one aunt would call me and be like, well, don't put this in the book. But, one time we were taking IQ tests and and it was just really hilarious and very fun and a great way to connect on a different level that you normally don't. So yeah, it was great. And it was very cathartic too. It really helped move me through my grief process too, because I realized that in writing this book, I was keeping Graham alive. I was keeping her alive with me. I was keeping our family story alive. And that's what storytelling's all about, you know?
Yeah, because don't they say, and I know this is grim, but like, don't they say like in like 100 years, like basically like you're forgotten, like because like like the people that remembered you are all gone now, and like even the
That,
people like after that kind of forget about you. And also like,
yeah,
well, unless you're like a celebrity or something like that, that's like this
yeah.
it's like, but that's I mean it's life, but it's like also kind of like it's like kind of sucks, but it's the reality of
Well,
things.
I think that makes it more important to tell our stories and keep
Yeah.
those stories alive, Um, that was Graham's fear, was that she was going to be forgotten after she died. And I wanted to tell her that there's no way you can be forgotten. You hold such a huge part in our family, a huge part in my heart, that just there's no way. And by writing this book, and I'm sure she helped me write this book. I'm sure she stuck
Oh yeah.
ideas in my head that I didn't know, and suddenly I'm writing this great book. But that is my promise to her, that her story is going to live on, and I'm going to share it with the world as much as I can, because it matters.
Yeah.
Real stories matter.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
It's funny, I every now and then my mom or somebody will kind of like, seep out like stories, of like my grandma, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that, kind of thing, like
Yeah.
funny things or even unflattering things, and you're like, oh, like the, like it turned out that in her young days, she like, I guess she dated like a brother or something like that. That's somebody that was in the band of Santana.
Oh,
The band.
cool.
Yeah, so she was like
Yeah.
basically a groupie.
Your grandmother was?
Yeah, and I was
Oh,
like,
that's
what?
awesome.
And I was like, what the hell? Like, where did this come from? I mean, it was like obviously way back in like the very very early days of like the band,
Yeah.
So and then
I,
she went on to do her thing, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, why didn't nobody talk about this?
that's really cool. Yeah,
So,
and
so they
it's
say, yeah,
well, and it's funny how you when you're interviewing your family, or your family's just talking maybe at the Christmas table, what does come up?
yeah.
My grandmother, I we had been to visit my sister who lives 4 hours away, and we were driving back, and it was just me and her in the car, and it was before she had dementia, so like she was still kind of unfiltered. And she was telling me about how her cousin was in the first Broadway show of Showboat. And that, she was a Broadway star, and Graham would go and visit her up there. And I was like, wow, I had no idea that anyone in our
Wow.
family like was a theater star, like in the 1920s. But, just having that time in the car really was able to bring that out. And I don't know, that's kind of cool, important stuff that we don't always know, or we don't always talk about, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me wonder because like there's like some like uh, there's some people in the family that have like certain conditions, medical things, and especially like like mental stuff. So like um growing up, we lived in a haunted house,
Oh,
and yeah, it was so fun.
Was
And
yours a scary ghost or a not scary ghost?
I would say more scary because more things happened, like
Yeah.
things falling off the wall, a lot of like whispering, like, tapping on the shoulder,
Oh, that's kind of scary.
yeah,
Yeah. We
lots of
live.
noises. You would see people and stuff sometimes.
Mm, mm. So
Not
kind of
so
like a horror movie.
Yeah, but not to the extreme. Like it's still scary, but it wasn't like, oh, we're
Yeah.
gonna kill you, kind of thing. But
Hmm.
like even my grandmother, she had her issues too. Not that I would know what they were because I don't think that she ever got diagnosed with anything. But
Mm,
like schizophrenia runs in the family a little bit. And I'm like,
mm.
oh, like maybe that's why we sell stuff.
Well, and back then, I mean, they didn't really talk about that. Schizophrenia wasn't even a diagnosis,
Yeah,
and if you think about mental health in the 50s, a lot of times they just get locked away and forgotten about.
or like a
My
lobotomy
grandmother
or
had a
something. Yeah.
nervous breakdown. Yeah, she had a nervous breakdown in 1957, and we knew it happened, but it was never talked about.
Hmm.
And until 3 days after her death, when we were kind of going through her stuff, we found this drawer that was like a time capsule, and it had
Hmm.
all this memorabilia from the really bad time of her life that we never, not that we never understood, but we didn't talk about painful things. We only talked about happy things.
Yeah.
So that was very eye-opening for the family, and eye-opening as to the pain that she went through, and the depth of the pain of, losing your husband at 42 years old and having 4 kids with no income and no pension. And at that time in 1957, she felt like she had no future because she was a woman, with no job, and
Hmm.
how scary that must have been for her. Yeah.
Yeah. No money coming in. Like just the work environment was
Yeah.
very little.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
post-war. So.
Sure. And I think it's important to tell stories about mental health because there's historically been such taboo around it. Oh, we're not going to talk about that. Oh, that, we're just going to shove that back in the closet. We're going to
Hmm.
sweep it under the rug. And it's a real issue, and it's an issue that all families face, and maybe even all people face, some sort of either depression or anxiety or something. And if we never talk about it, then it never becomes something that we can all accept.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think my grandmother, even though she had a nervous breakdown, it almost transformed her into a person that after that time she decided that I'm not going to be bothered by stress anymore. It was such a stressful time for her that her body shut down. And then when it came back, she was like, okay, we're just not going to worry about it because worry takes us nowhere. And I think being raised with her like that has really benefited my adult life. That, you know, we live in turbulent times right now with
Yeah.
political stuff going on and stress, but there's only so much you can do about it. So I kind of take on her attitude of, okay, well, it's going on. It will pass. I'm not going to, sit in the bottom of the pit and just stew in it. And that's been a very good life lesson for me that I learned from her based on that, nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I realized over time that seeing like the things my grandma would go through, money issues, whatever,
Hmm.
and like just her reaction to things, and my reaction to things is very very similar to where
Hmm.
I crash. I crash for a couple of days, and then I'm like, all right, well, like you said, I'm not going to stew in this forever. I gotta get back on the horse and and ride along. But I'm
Yeah.
like, man, it's such like a spitting image of my grandmother. It's
That's
just
so
like,
cool.
yeah, it's weird. It's a weird thing. Like that you don't even realize like which part of the family or like which like things that you take from each member of the family. So like
Yeah.
I get that kind of stuff from her, and then like my grandpa, like I get like the sort of like the comedy thing to where like everything is mostly a joke to me, like or at least I try to spin it to
Hmm.
where I'm not gonna take this too seriously, otherwise I'm gonna get in that position to where I will stew in it for too long. So I have to like spin it to like where okay, well maybe it's not as bad as you think it is. So let's try
Yeah.
to make a little bit of light of this,
Yeah.
and so I try to use more comedy in a lot of things, even though that's not always the best thing to do. But it's I'm like, well, I'm trying to lighten the mood a little bit. you know.
Yeah. I think I kind of do that too, It's like a coping mechanism.
Oh yeah,
And I
for
think
sure.
laughter is always a way to heal. Maybe I don't know, laughter like releases endorphins and just uh, helps us move through tough times, I think. So I
Yeah,
think there's something about what you're doing that's right. And it's obviously right for you, because we're not all going to have the same recipe for healing or getting through or grief or whatever. You know,
yeah.
it's just one of those things we have to do.
And
Yeah.
so like so from that day that you started writing to like the finish of the book, how long was that? How long was the process for that?
Oh, um, this whole story took me about 8 years to finish.
Okay, yeah, that's
Um,
true.
I've written two since then that have each took me a year to finish, but this one, it was a very emotional story. It was very close to my heart,
Yeah,
and some parts were really hard to write, just because I'd cry,
yeah,
I'd get stuck. I didn't know how to weave it into the full story arc. And memoir is funny. You can get down these rabbit holes, especially when you're interviewing your relatives. They can, you can't be putting out a 700-page book. It's not
yeah.
the Iliad. So it took me 8 years, but I was also working and raising a baby. So, so if
Like,
anyone out there is a writer and it's taking you a long time, don't worry. I mean, yeah, 8 years, but it ended up being good. Yeah, just do it till it's done. Yeah.
yeah. I wish I had that. I wish I would have done something like that when I was younger because now most of the families are dead now. So or just
Hmm.
don't talk to each other. So um, yeah, I wish I would have got more stories and stuff, or I don't know, put something together. But because
Do you
I'm a
think that could
creative,
be a way to reconnect with your family?
no, I think it's the damage is done for certain things. I think it's just. I mean, maybe it was some of them, but there's definitely some of the family that just don't care to speak. So um,
That's a
and I don't
shame.
know, part of me, well, it is a shame, but a part of me, I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. I have
Yeah.
better things to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's not really a big deal, but I wish I would have done it earlier to maybe there was a chance to get some more stories out or whatever. Because I am also a creative person, so I do like to write on the side when I am
Yeah.
motivated to. So that would have been a cool thing to do, but you know,
Yeah.
it's cool that you did it though. Like, even though it took you time.
It took me time, and I was surprised when it came out. Two of my aunts got very mad at me for what I put in there, and I was completely blindsided by it because I really didn't think they'd be upset since we talked about all these things. Um, and they felt like I portrayed them in a way that wasn't true to them.
Yeah,
But when you're writing a memoir, I didn't write it from third person. I wrote it from my own, like first person. So
yeah,
the whole story is kind of based on what I saw, what I felt of that week, how I saw things happening. And, if you and me were in the same situation and wrote a story about an event, I'd tell it from my point of view and you'd tell it from your point of view. And
right,
um, I was surprised that, when you write a memoir, sometimes, people aren't happy with it, even though I've won an IPPY award for it for transformational nonfiction and it's done like really well. Um, I had two angry aunts. So when we're done with the screenplay, which we're almost done with, I've changed it around a little bit so that it won't be as touchy. Um,
okay,
yeah, but when I did write this book, I kind of wrote it on the stages of grief and how we were all dealing with the stages of grief. So if people are kind of stuck with grief on some level, they can read this book and see how we did it. And maybe it can act as like an aid to them, because nobody knows how to grieve. It's weird. We don't get taught it at school, and it's one of those things that a lot of people just struggle with. And again, don't talk about, and it's important to move through it.
uh, that's a that's wild that you mentioned that about like school, because like there's like so many things that like in life that you should know, you know,
Mhm.
like basic
Yeah.
life stuff. And
Hmm.
you know, we don't get taught any of that, not anymore at least. We don't get taught about, like real life things, and it's just getting us prepared for, the future job or whatever instead.
Yeah.
Um,
Which, I mean, that matters too. It
yeah, of course that
does.
matters.
But
Yeah,
I think sometimes emotional things, things that really pull at your core and really tug at you, I don't know. It's easier to think about something else. It's easier to think about the grocery list or, homework or whatever. And, if we don't deal with that, that's the stuff that keeps you up at night. That's the stuff that keeps you from, moving on with your life, going on and getting married or whatever, and when you do say, hey, I'm going to move through this and really work towards it, then, you free yourself. And there is benefit and joy on the other end of it, just from allowing yourself to move through that painful time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
how's like the book was written, you published it, you're going on tours and all that stuff.
mhm.
How's that reaction been to like the public, to where, they come up to you and they start, talking to you, and you're just like, oh, like,
um, you know, I was so surprised that random people would just come up to me and be like, this book changed my life. Or I had
mm,
a similar relationship with my grandmother and it really helped me grieve her death. Or I've even had, I thought most of my readers would be women, maybe, 50-plus-year-old women. And I've been surprised at how many men um, have read the book and been like, I was close to my grandmother and this really made me remember that bond I had. Or I had a guy that was a Vietnam vet and he's like, it really helped me move through some of the grief that I held on to with that. So knowing that your work, your words are making a difference in other people's lives it's just awesome. It's very exciting and it makes all the struggle worth it,
yeah,
knowing that you're
yeah.
helping change people's lives. Yeah.
Just that is like the reward in itself, right?
Oh, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
For sure. And I think that, that is part of the magic of memoir is that, you know, when you write memoir, you're inviting someone else into your life.
yeah,
You're opening up that chapter and say, hey, this is what my heart is. It's almost like reading a diary. And I think when we connect on a deeper level like that, it brings out the humanness in everybody and it helps soften some of the hard exterior.
right.
So it's been pretty cool being able to help with that too.
And so the other books you have done, are they're published?
They're not published yet. I have two others. The second one is the follow up to The Significance of Curly Hair.
Oh,
It's called
okay.
The Special Recipe for Making Babies. I'm still trying to find the right publishing deal right now. Still working out the kinks on that. And the third one is a fiction.
What's the fiction one about?
The fiction one is about two high school friends that turned into lovers that then broke up and met again years later, and
Hmm.
a crazy journey back to each other. Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was kind of fun writing fiction just because, with memoir, you have to follow a certain pattern. And with
Yeah.
fiction, you can just make stuff up. If there's like a little lag in the storyline, what am I going to put there? And that was really kind of cool and fun and exciting, even though I
Well,
am truly a memoirist, but
yeah.
it was nice.
I love that part of fiction where like you literally create worlds, something
Hmm.
that did not exist before, and now you're the painter, on the page of text, Um,
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
yeah, me and my friend wrote have you ever been to California before?
I have a long time ago,
Okay. Well,
like
there
1999.
okay. So there's a coast town called Santa Cruz, and
Hmm.
it's sort of by it's Bay Area-ish,
Hmm.
kind of by San Jose.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, it's a college town. It's very like remote place. That's where they filmed the Lost Boys, or part of it.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and so, but it's a very like tight knit community. You know, it's like very small, quaint, and uh, it's got its own feel to it. And so me and my buddy, I lived there for 5 years until you know I went through a divorce and all that stuff, and then eventually I moved away. But uh, we had we had wrote this idea. It's kind of like a mini series, to where
Cool.
like we got so the character, I'll just sort of paraphrase it, but like it's just about this college kid that moves to that town, and he sees all the craziness around him because it's not a normal town. It's like a lot of homeless. People are just kind of, they not really do what they want, but everything that you would think would be kind of crazy, like on the street, like they do it
Hmm.
there,
Okay.
and so it's just about like kind of the wackiness of it, and sort of like a kind of like a dramedy also. Like it's a coming of age slash modern day like take on relationships and uh just being in a new town and the weirdness of it. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's sort of based off reality, but it's not at the same time because you're like, well, these characters are not real.
Yeah.
But I definitely took aspects of my own life into a lot of these characters. So I'm like, so these people exist semi, like kind of, but they don't really.
Mm,
Um, it's just so fun to like write fiction like that because I'm like, oh, I could, this world is my canvas now, and I'm
yeah.
just sort of painting on top of it.
You can weave in what you want.
Right.
Yeah. So
With
where is that now?
it's still on my laptop. I'm just kind of
Mm,
sitting there and I haven't written anything in a while. I haven't been motivated. I've been so busy with like this stuff. So
yeah.
um
It's
I
funny
hope
how
one day
life
I
gets in the
can
way.
yeah. I try to explain to people it's kind of like Wonder Years, but like funnier. Um
That sounds like
so
something that needs to be out there.
yeah, I don't know. I got so much going on.
Hmm. Okay. Well, maybe that will be on your future radar, you know?
I would hope so.
Yeah, because, stories matter. And I don't know, that's what just kind of brings us all together, especially something like the Wonder Years. Like, who hasn't watched that and connected with it and felt like, yeah, that was me?
Yeah. Um
Yeah.
so like the time frame of this book, like so you wrote it from you were what 13 or something? I forgot. You were very young when the story started. And then it kind of
Well,
goes in and
I
out.
so the time frame is actually I'm in my early 30s, but I jump back to stories from my
Right.
childhood. I jump back to when I was 13 and Graham asked me to write her story. So the actual week of her death, I'm in my early 30s, but
Okay.
there are flashbacks from my mother's childhood, from when their father died, from my grandmother's childhood, from my childhood. So it kind of jumps back and forth.
Yeah.
But the whole story takes place in the one week that followed my grandmother's death.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so that ends obviously at the end of the book, but then so like the next one you plan on writing or publishing, so
Mhm.
that's going to be from after, so I guess basically from that point to when you start having children. Is that when?
Yeah. So I was young and gay, and I really thought I needed to live my life differently from my grandmother's because I thought she was just, I felt like she didn't get to achieve her dreams.
Mhm.
And by the end of the book, I realized, maybe raising good people, people that cared, people that loved, people that are able to connect with other people, maybe that was the fulfillment of her dream. And maybe it's okay to be young and gay and independent and working and still
Mhm.
want that too. Still want to have family and that connection and that ability to hand stories down from generation to generation. So at the end of the story, I realized that, I can keep Graham alive by having a baby and raising her the way I was raised by my parents and Graham. So then the second story is how my wife and I did it as a lesbian
Okay.
couple, and it's very very funny because it was not just go to the bank and do it like that. It was.
Yes.
Friends, friends bringing over pictures of their husbands at 4 years old and saying, "Hey, look at this." You could, it's a lot lighter, funnier story.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was because I have a 18-year-old about to turn 19, and you know we all parent differently, right? I mean, there's obviously things that I could have done better, um,
Hmm.
but like every time I talk to about parenthood to other parents,
Yeah.
I'm always like, look, I was like, I don't care what he does in life, like just I was like, just please don't be an asshole. Like my number one thing, just please be a decent person, like um
Yeah.
that's always like my rule of thumb. I'm like, I don't care if he just like smokes weed all day as long as he doesn't like ruin lives, kind of thing. Um, I mean,
Well,
obviously, I would want him to like succeed in certain things, but you can't control that.
true. True. And there is something about, passing on good things, and that is funny. Don't be an asshole, cuz yeah.
Yeah,
Cuz
yeah,
there's plenty of them out there, and if the only people having children are the people that don't care, then when are we going to get those good people out there that do care, and
yeah.
um, there is something about raising kids with love and trust and support and passing on good things. So yeah, I totally get it. Yeah. Our daughter's 15 now, so
Okay,
we're getting some of that teenage stuff too. And
yeah.
it's cool to see her growing up, and it's cool to see her becoming her own person and seeing what we instilled in her, and also now who she's going to be on her own. It's kind of cool.
It's also wild because like, and I was listening to this on another podcast, but like, you can do everything for that child and to try to like mold them into like a certain not like completely like you know manipulate them for like their personality, but like you can give them the tools to do the right thing, right? And
Mhm.
that can all like they can do whatever like they're their own person. They could still like completely go into a different direction. You're like, well, there goes my ass. There goes
Yeah.
everything. It's just wild. Because I did, when we were kids, like, or especially me, I'm still a stubborn person. So I still like make bad decisions. I'm like, I don't know why I did that. Like, I know better. It's like it's just
Yeah.
I
You
don't know.
know,
It's wild.
I have a little plaque by my writing desk, and it has these three women's on it, and it says, "Bad decisions make for the best storytelling." And
Oh yeah.
isn't that the truth? I mean, if we all lived perfect lives, what fun would it be? What would we be writing about if no one ever made any mistakes?
There was like a saying, or there was like a placard I saw or something like that. It was like, no great storytelling started with drinking a glass of milk or something like that. It was like it was something wild like that. I'm like, that makes so much sense.
It does. It does. Yeah.
Which
One
is
bad
funny
night, one
because
bad decision.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is funny. That's kind of why I started the podcast thing because I was like, I have so many funny stories I can tell. Like, and sure, my family's not gonna like them, but they don't have to listen. And I gave a lot of warnings when I started podcasting. I was like, Mom, don't listen to my channel. You are not gonna want to hear my stories because I've
That
had some
is
wild nights. And
that is hilarious.
yeah.
That's hilarious. Well,
Uh,
can she watch sometimes?
I would tell her, I'd be like, oh, that one you can listen to because I'm not saying nothing too crazy.
Yeah.
Because at that time that's when the channel was like more comedy based, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, I remember this night and blah blah blah, and I'm like, man, I lived like a rock star for a bit. I was like, it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Now I'm boring. I'm so boring now.
I find that highly unlikely.
Well, I mean, not I'm boring in a way to where like the old me would have been like, "What are you doing?" Kind of thing. But like even though I'm content, I'm fine. I'm happy, doing what I'm doing. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well, good.
which
And people enjoy it, and you've got your following, and it's something you're passionate about, and that matters. You know,
yeah,
sharing
uh,
that dream and sharing that is, that's kind of what it's all about, you know.
Yeah, it's been a great ride, honestly. So that's your goal now is to publish these next two books.
Yeah, I have the next two to publish, and then we are coming out with the screenplay for Significance of Curly Hair. So we're going to be
Okay,
shopping that very soon too. The feature film. Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And then I mean, I still have my day job, and I'm raising my daughter, and I'm married,
Yeah.
and but yeah, and I do have a fourth book in the works too. That is about three a little bit past middle-aged women who have all lost their spouses that go on a trip to Canada to return a dog to a theater man. So that's
Okay.
yeah, so that's what I've been working on when I'm not, pushing my books and, traveling on my book tour and that kind of stuff.
So that one is that like based is that like kind of grounded on like comedy or is that more like drama or what?
It's very funny. It is
Okay.
fiction, and it's my first book that I've ever written that, like, really none of what's going on in there has anything to do with my life.
Okay.
So that was kind of a, just toss some ideas in a bowl and kind of pull them out and
Yeah.
see how the story arc comes. So that's been kind of fun, a new thing that I've never done before.
That
Yeah.
sounds fun because I'm like, oh, I want to read about a road trip that especially with that premise, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, road trips, whenever there's like a journey for the characters and you're going on a physical journey and then your character arc kind of follows that journey, it's fun to see where you can take them. And then one of the characters finds love at the end, because who doesn't want that?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what
Yeah.
my story is about too, is like the college kid and who he falls in love with. And again, it's
Yeah.
modern, so like you know, once I figure that out, I already have the idea, but once I figure that out, it'll be a lot different from like your traditional love story. So, or
Yeah. Well,
at least in the old days.
I want to be your beta reader.
If I can keep writing, sure, I would probably reach out to you
Yeah.
and I'll, you
Yeah.
know, give receive notes, I guess you can say.
Yeah. Because that sounds very exciting. That would be totally something I would want to read.
Yeah, and it's also a lot of it based on actual things that I've experienced. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well, and that's what makes storytelling cool, is that, even though you're writing fiction, there's always some truth in there, because
mhm.
we all take little snippets from this and that. And it's a
Easy
good way.
inspiration.
Yeah. It's a good way to learn about how to live.
So when you're not, writing and family stuff, like what are you doing to sort of entertain yourself to keep yourself busy? What's like the thing that you
Oh,
can escape to?
well, I am a rock and roll drummer. I drum
Oh,
with the Jessie Albright Band. I also play with the Randall Davis Revival. We tour around the Southeast, and
wow.
yeah, so that is the other half of my heart,
Okay.
music. Yeah, so it just brings great joy to me.
Yeah.
Um, we're a six-piece band, and just it's a lot of fun.
That
Yeah,
sounds incredible.
yeah, yeah.
I would
So
love that.
I get to do all things that I love. I ride, I play the drums. By day, I'm a chiropractor. I have my own office, and
Okay.
none of those things feel like work to me. So I feel like I'm very blessed that I can have all of these things and not feel like I'm sitting down and working. It's just things I enjoy to do. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's so cool.
yeah, it is pretty cool.
I know so many musicians and you know, I'm like, wow, man. And I dabbled in, rap a long time ago, years and years ago. Never went anywhere, obviously, but it was fun to like, and I'll still write just to like, kind of get the mind going.
Yeah,
Um, but I never like put anything out, but it's just, yeah, music is such a great thing, an outlet, and
it
sort of change your
is.
mood in a way,
You know, when we
or even
play
enhance your
together,
mood.
yeah, when we play, like, and we just kind of get into that pocket and get into that groove, like anything on the outside that has been bothering me, it just like totally goes away.
Yeah,
It's just like it's really cool to have that vibe. Um, and you don't find that all the time. So,
right.
I try to keep this band together because we work really well together. We've all like seasoned musicians, and there's not much drama. It's nice. It's a really nice outlet, and it's just enjoyable, and people enjoy coming out to see us too, even though, like, we're not, you know we're not like, touring Japan or huge things, but
Right.
it's enough. It's enough,
Yeah.
you
It
know?
sounds
Yeah.
sounds incredible. I have friends that, I mean, you're probably, way ahead of them, but like, they do a lot of local stuff, but it's still like just that feedback is still incredible. Like, even just reaching out a couple of people here and there, it's like it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Sort of
Well,
the
and
same thing with like the podcast thing with me. It's like
mhm,
same
yeah,
effect.
because yeah, and part of what you're doing is reaching out to someone else and also, helping change them. It's kind of cool in whatever your format is, and on some bigger level, that's how we all remain connected and remain human and remain like real people, not bots.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying not to live as an NPC.
Yeah,
It's
for sure. For sure.
funny. I told because I work in a public space, and I was talking to a customer, and they were like, I forgot why the conversation started, but I was helping them out, and then I had mentioned like not being an NPC, and they just started cracking up. They're like, "Oh my God, you're like the first person to say that in like, days." And I'm like, "Oh, I was just being kind of funny." But they're like, "But it's true." And it was like, "Yeah, yeah, it is." But anyway, have a good day. Like a robot. I'm like, have a good day.
Yeah. It is funny how our world is shifting to that. And sometimes it is hard to tell who is a real person and a robot, sadly, because they
Yeah.
do sound just like us. But
That's
yeah.
why I'm again injecting jokes anytime I can, especially at work. I'm like, okay, I
Yeah, for
can't be
sure.
this like robot. It drives me nuts. So,
Yeah.
anytime it's funny, like it's just like little dumb things. Like if someone's like they can't reach something on the shelf, I'm like, okay, you want a boost? And it's like just like dumb things like that, and they start laughing. I'm like, all right, I got you. That's hopefully that'll like do something in your day to where like you laughed and you're like, that guy was funny, that guy was stupid, or whatever. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the point. This was a great conversation, especially, sort of the whole, you know, kind of responding to tragic events and, what you went through, like, what people like I went through, especially within
Mhm.
that small time frame. And it's wild to like think that like, even though we live completely separate lives, we kind of went through the same sort of,
Yeah.
not exactly the same thing, but like, along the lines of the same thing.
Similar.
And it's like,
Yeah.
it's
That
really
same
cool to like,
emotion.
it's really cool that you, written this memoir to, kind of help people to get through that process and, help work on that grief and,
Hmm.
that, and some, even trauma, if depending on the situation. So, I think it's incredible. I appreciate you, writing these things because it does help, it helps a lot of people. So
Well,
what you're doing is incredible, and I think, and I hope that this becomes. It's already successful. Like you've already doing some great things, but I hope it continues to go, and the the stakes just go even higher, especially with the publishing deals and like if you can get it on screen, it would be incredible. I would love to see that.
oh, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on. Um, Here is the cover of the book,
Yeah.
Significance of Curly Hair. That is actually Graham's wedding picture right there.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah.
Um,
And I,
I'm
I,
gonna
I had a great time talking with you too.
I'm gonna have the picture on like the description and stuff like that, so like they'll be able to see where it is and where they can buy it. Um,
Cool.
and if you have any socials, I can plug it in. If not, that's fine also. Um, yeah, and then
Okay.
we'll just kind of go from there.
Sounds great. You want me to just send them to you after?
Sure, either that or Joey, because I know he's like
Oh,
involved in most of the things, right? But yeah, either way, it's fine.
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
What do you have going on for the rest of the day?
Um, let's see. Right now I'm making a lasagna bolognese for Thanksgiving.
Oh, nice.
What about you?
I have another interview, and then I'm going to work for 8 hours.
Okay. Well, I hope the next interview is a very good one as well, because this was so fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I'll as soon as it drops or when I know the date, I'll shoot you a message and Hopefully I'll hear from you again in the future.
Okay, well, that would be cool. And I can't wait to read your book.
Uh, if it ever comes to fruition, I'll definitely send you some pages or something.
Well, one chapter at a time. Don't think of the whole thing. Just, get through one chapter and then get through the next chapter. And then before you know it, you're at chapter 29.
Yeah, I can send you like the first like because it's basically episodes, so I can
I
send
would
you like
love
the
that.
the first one. And obviously it's only the first draft. I haven't really like
Okay.
fleshed it out all the way yet, but it's the gist of it. So
Well,
yeah,
maybe that will stir up your passion for it again.
I hope so because I need to get stuff done. I have so many writings and stuff I got to do, but
Okay, well, send it over. I'd be happy to read it.
all right, I'll do that. And again, you have a great day. I hope that the boy on these comes out great. Uh,
Thank you.
I would love to try it, but um, all right,
All
I'll
right.
be talking to you later.
Okay, thank you so much. Have
All
a
right,
great day. Have a happy
too.
holiday.
You too. Thank you.